The word projection is an interesting one because it applies both to cinema, as films are projected onto a screen, but it's also a technical word used by psychoanalysts and other psychologists in relation to the attribution of feelings, thoughts, emotions to another person, feelings and thoughts that belong to oneself. Projection is perhaps one of the mechanisms used in dreams, but dreams use mostly different mechanisms. Such mechanisms are, for instance, displacement, condensation, which means condensing together two different elements to form a new one, which is a combined version of the two.
In some ways, you see, I like this idea of the fragmented time that really questions the now, because if you think of the frame-by-frame construction of film, you can start to think about, well, what's the duration of now? And I think in film terms, it's reasonable to assume that the duration of now is 1/50th of a second, which is the time that each individual still frame is put up on the screen. But when we're looking at a film, of course, we get this illusion of motion that's not really present in the individual film strips. It's all based on the way we perceive moving images and the black shutter closing between each frame. And I think that's, in some ways, can be seen like the motion of a wave. I'm talking about a wave at sea. Because in a wave, the wave appears to move across the surface of the sea. But in fact, we know that all the particles of water stay in the same place. It's just the transmission of an energy force through the water that creates the perception that the water itself is moving, that it's not, except of course in the case of a breaking crest, then the water moves. But if the wave's not breaking, the water particles stay in the same place. Now that's a very nice parallel with film, because all the individual frames, like those individual particles of water in the wave, they're still. It's only in the succession of having them projected at 25 frames a second that we get this illusion of movement, just like the wave.
The dimension of time is very crucial to our understanding of cinema. Not only cinema uses techniques that allow time to be expanded, to be restricted, to be asked to go back in time through flashbacks, or to go forward in time through flash forwards, but the process of editing itself allows us to condensate in the space of an hour, 2 hours, an hour and 50 minutes, however long a film is, sometimes 5 minutes, to condensate a lot of material that takes place on a different time scale.
Something that I would refer to as fragmented time, or in another way of describing it, the impossibility of the present. To me, now, the notion of now at one level is very paradoxical, because it's the 1/10th in time that we can only experience. We can't reflect on it because we haven't got time to reflect on it because it's already past. So one's sort of halfway between reflection, which is all that's happened in the past, and speculation, what's going to happen next.
The metaphor of the mirror is a powerful one, because both dreams and the silver screen of cinemas are distorting mirrors. They are mirrors, but they distort what was originally there in order to make it acceptable to our consciousness.
Like the film mechanism, the celluloid film mechanism, which is intermittent, I think we think intermittently, very much like the movement in a cine camera or in a film projector. And that there's this constant collision of thoughts going on in our mind. So I quite like the idea of making this parallel with the intermittent movement of the film camera, film projector. And I think in some ways we might dream in a similar way in which we think. Reflexivity is a term that can be applied to all the arts, but I think very interestingly in relation to film. And for me, part of the definition of reflexivity is like the conventional view of cinema, Hollywood cinema, say, is that the screen is a window onto a world. I like the idea of that window being both the window onto the world, but also a mirror that reflects the processes by which that film is made back to the audience. So I like that idea of, it's like looking at the screen, so it's a semi-reflecting mirror, or the semi-reflecting mirror halfway in the projector beam, so that you can see through it to look at the illusion. But at the same time, you're seeing the process. The process is revealed by which the filmmaking process happens.